Well, Happy New Year and welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. A lot to get to as we recap a thrilling Holiday Bowl victory for Oregon over North Carolina. Also, we'll give you our final grades for the team this year and head coach Dan Lanning as his first season is now behind him. And then we'll also check out the rest of the Pac-12 when it comes to the bowl season. The conference maybe not faring as well as many people thought. And then we'll start to take a look ahead to next season, which shapes up to be pretty incredible for the conference when you consider the quarterbacks coming back. But let's go ahead and get to our opening drive, brought to you by Les Schwab Tire Centers, where they've been doing the right thing since 1952. And well, I already broke my first resolution, and that is bringing in Aaron Fentress to join us from the Oregonian, along with our good friends Joey Harrington, Anthony Newman. And Joey, let's start with you because you've won a Holiday Bowl before in your past. And you look at this game between Oregon and North Carolina, and I know as I ask this question, you're having somebody just make sure the grass is solid at your house right now because it wasn't when they played. But what do you take away from the way Oregon wins this game, closes things out, and puts an end to this season?
Well, first of all, I think that it is important to establish, because I had some people say to me, this last week or two, like, 10 wins is important. Well, okay. They got their 10th win, okay? The fact that they got 10 wins out of 13 games this season, I don't think is a big milestone. However, winning their final game of the season, which happened to be the 10th game, was an important thing. Ending on that note, especially the way that things finished with the regular season in the letdown against Oregon State. Look, this could have been a setup for disaster in terms of all the transfers go. Players start opting out for the NFL draft. Bo Nix isn't healthy. Is Ty Thompson gonna be able to step into that position? Instead, what happened was Coach Lanning and the players there came together and played. It wasn't by any means a perfect game, and at times, because of the field and because of their play, it was a little bit of a sloppy game, but it was a game that you can end on a positive note. You can close this season and say, this Oregon football season, Dan Lanning's first season as a head coach, these are all positive things and provide momentum going into the offseason. So I thought it was a great win. I thought the way that they dug it out was said a lot about the team's character, and I'm really optimistic, I think is a really good word going into this offseason.
Come to me next, man, because Joey thinks he's slick. What Joey's trying to say is that when he went 10-2 and 11-1, that was way better than going in 10-3 today. That's what Joey's trying to say. Don't let him fool you. When he won the Holiday Bowl, they were 10-2. No, he's not wrong, but still, regardless of how you do the math, 10 wins, it still looks way better. 10-3 looks way better than 9-4.
10's more than 9.
Yeah, and so I think it was a big deal. And also, when you think about it, this was their second best ending to a season. They lost the national championship game in 2014, but at least they were in it. So since that season, this is their second best ending to a season to the Rose Bowl victory following the 2019 season. Other than that, you got the Red Box Bowl, right? Or you got losses. So, if you're a fan, this was the biggest end of the season win you've celebrated, the second biggest since beating Florida State in the Rose Bowl and then losing the national title game. So it's huge. Also, anyone who doesn't think it matters, look at I'm gonna say kids because I'm old enough to be most of their daddies or all their daddies, is that did you see their faces after they won that game? How excited those guys were? Like, they were so elated. And when you work that hard for weeks to practice for something and playing, it doesn't matter what it's called. If you're a competitor and an athlete, you're gonna go out there and try and win it. You could be 6-6 and the bowl game is gonna mean something to you. This meant something to those guys. And if you're a Duck fan who doesn't think this was that big a deal and you're waiting for the national championship game, you could be waiting for a long time. You better enjoy wins like this because they're going to come around more often than national championship opportunities.
Anthony, how did you digest this one? Oregon gets 10 wins, like Joey said. You beat North Carolina. You bank in a field goal at the last second to close out the season with a dub. I'm sure you were jumping up and down in the living room.
Yeah, why not? 10 wins. Now think about this for a minute. You start out the year with the new head coach. You have a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, all new coaches. You have a new strength coach and maybe trainers. I don't know. And maybe equipment guys. Who knows? But everybody's new. Then you
Kenny
get a
and
new
Chief are still there.
Then you get then you get a new quarterback, and now all of a sudden the season starts. You start with a new running back, and the receivers that were there, they haven't really done anything. The only thing that you had coming back from last year was a deep offensive line, an offensive line that had played a lot of games together, and they were pretty good. And let's talk about them. They were outstanding all year long and dealing with injuries. And let's also talk about injuries. Injuries are part of the game. It happens. So to go through the whole year without having your key guys get hurt, and if they did get hurt, you're still able to win 10 football games, to me, that's big.
All right, well, you heard it. It's big, according to Anthony Newman. All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll talk more about the offensive performance. Bo Nix was impressive. And how about Chase Cota closing his career with a storybook-like ending? We'll continue to break it down when we come back on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for our legendary moment, brought to you by Abby's Legendary Pizza. And well, when your uncle used to suit up for the Ducks and you transfer from UCLA to play your final college football season at Oregon, it doesn't get any better than this. Chase Cota, the game-winning touchdown catch, or should I say game-tying catch at that moment, to close out the Holiday Bowl and his collegiate career in a Duck uniform. Pretty special stuff right there. And Joey, let's start with you. I know you're kind of a sap for some of this nostalgic, sweet Oregon stuff here. What do you think that meant to the Cota family and to Chase to make that type of play at that moment?
I mean, it had to be huge. I mean, I can speak personally that playing at the school where your father played, is playing at the school where you have a connection to your family and your community, it means a lot. And to be able to have the type of success that he had this season, to be able to end it on that note, I mean, I don't know that you could have drawn up a better season for Chase. I mean, coming in as a senior transfer, knowing that you're not the biggest recruit out of everybody, there's all these talented young wide receivers. He came in and played a role and played that role so perfectly. Like, he was literally the guy that Bo could look to and knew exactly where he was going to be. He was so intuitive. He was so selfless, putting his body on the line to make big catches. And it just showed, again, at the end of this season, how he was willing to put himself out there to have that kind of success. And that's something that he'll be able to keep with him for a lifetime, really.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joey. When Chase joins us next year and replaces Aaron on this show, in his office, he's going to have a picture of that touchdown catch right there. I'm playing, Aaron. You know you're a lifer here. But, I mean, as a writer, as a journalist, Aaron, someone that appreciates good storytelling, I mean, this makes it pretty special, this moment for Chase. And really, to come up with that clutch of a play, props to the umpire for ducking, by the way. I mean, that's going to be something that Duck fans are going to remember forever as well, too, regardless of what was at stake this season.
No, I agree. I may or may not have cried. No, I'm kidding. I didn't quite cry, but I definitely enjoyed the moment. We said at the beginning of the year, actually, we said when they got him to transfer, they needed a veteran presence in that receivers room because they had a bunch of youngins who are still trying to find themselves as receivers. And you get a big veteran target who'd been around, who is going to understand any type of offense, the nuances of the offense, how to read coverages, how to change his routes, how to be where you need him to be. And he gave you basically exactly what Juwan Johnson gave them in 2019. Almost identical stats, too. I think Cota had 467 in yardage, 3 touchdowns. Juwan Johnson had 497, I think, and 4 touchdowns. But big targets, veteran targets, who can just sort of add some balance to the force almost. And that's what he gave you. So to see his career end in an Oregon uniform and end with a game-winning, I'm going to call it game-winning regardless of the PAT, although they did almost miss the PAT. That's another story. Was awesome to see. And props to Bo Nix and Cota for that was a great example of having that synergy, that connection, because Nix was under pressure, throwing off his back foot, but he threw it to where he knew his guy was going to be. And reportedly, Cota called the play, and I would assume he called it in part because he thought that Cota would come open underneath and be wide open. So he wasn't quite wide open, but he was open. So no, it was a great moment to see, and definitely a storybook finish for the Cota family. Unless there's another Cota coming up, we don't know. And Chase could in 20 years could have a kid scoring a touchdown at Oregon. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see about all that. But Anthony, I mean, obviously you look at special moments and plays in bowl games, and regardless of what type of bowl it is, we remember them, whether it's Sammy Parker in the Fiesta Bowl, that touchdown. Joey just on balance catching that touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone against Texas in the Holiday Bowl.
Don't try and put
this to
athleticism
me
into my feet.
feels like one of those moments that when you're sitting around having a beverage with your buddies 15 years from now, you'll have no problem remembering this.
Well, this one was kind of special because, I know Chad Cota very well, and his son Chase is a baller, and he's consistent. So to make that play and win the game, it was outstanding because his cousin, Brady Breeze, did that a couple years ago. Okay, now they're cousins. He did that in the Rose Bowl, also in the Pac-12 championship game. Did the same thing, made some plays, became the MVP. And they had these two young kids growing up wanting to be Ducks, wanting to make those kind of plays, dreaming about making those plays as youngsters, and it happened. And, I'm so proud of Chase. He's just, who knows if he's going to the next level, but what he's done, in high school down there in Medford, and then down, coming to Oregon his last year to finish out his career here and make that big play. That was big time. It really was.
Yeah, and Joey, let's give some props to the guy that threw him the ball, Bo Nix, who for most of the game didn't look 100% comfortable, whether that was still coming back from the ankle injury, the conditions of the field, as we mentioned before. But he goes 9 of 10, final drive of the game, to get Oregon in position to win this one and delivers the pass when he needs to. What did you take away about his performance in choosing to come back, play in this bowl game, and lead his team to victory?
Before I move on to Bo, I had actually been listening and thinking about family moments in bowl games, and I'm curious if Oregon State's bowl win this year is going to resonate in the Newman household. I don't know if would that be comparable?
So you're basically asking Anthony Newman if Jaden Grant's going to be part of his family.
I don't know. I was just thinking like Oregon and football.
Rumors of, I think it was TMZ College Sports.
Yeah, exactly.
His daughter and
Hey, look, Jaden's going to join me next
but
time sitting here as a Duck analyst. We don't talk about Beavers anymore. He's coming to the good side. He's coming to the good side. Trust me.
But I digress. Bo's performance, you're right. He looked uncomfortable. Whether that was coming back off of injury, whether that is 3 weeks off, a month off of football, whether that's the field conditions, whether that's North Carolina's stout well, no, probably not. I don't know that really matters. All that stuff prior to the 9 of 10 and leading the team down the field, right? Because Bo, during the regular season, established all of that, I don't call it extra stuff, right? He established the stats. He did what he needed to do on the field. He showed that he can put up points. He can move. He can get the ball to the right spot. Do all the things you need to do necessary to be a quarterback. But what he showed the team, and not that he hasn't shown this earlier in the season, but I think he reinforced his role as a leader. Right? The quarterback's job is to win football games. And whether that's pretty by, putting up giant stats like he did all during the middle of the regular season, or whether that's fighting through an ugly game and having an opportunity at the end to drive the team down and score. Like, those are the kind of things that get the young guys in the locker room to pay attention. Those are the kind of things that when you have all these big recruits coming in and they're looking for somebody to show them the way, when they show up for off-season workouts, I tell you who they're going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for Bo Nix. They're going to be looking for that quarterback, not because of all the numbers that he put up during the season, but because of what he did in those moments. Right? Those get on my back and let me will this team to the victory moments. So I think it was unbelievably important for him to establish that. And I think that's just going to serve him so well going into this next season.
Through three quarters, I thought maybe we were going to hear after the game that he had a torn rotator cuff or a bad elbow. Like, he was so not Bo Nix in his accuracy, sailing passes, throwing passes into the ground. It was just so bizarre to watch. Some people were saying, well, maybe his foot's still not injured or his lower leg or whatever it was, and he couldn't plant. But I'm like, well, yeah, but he threw better in the Utah game, which was directly after he injured the foot. So I didn't think it was that. It was just weird. It's just one of those days where sometimes you just don't have it and you're off, and then you got to shake the cobwebs and figure it out. And I think when in looking at the history of Oregon quarterbacks, the thing I've always looked at is, how well guys play in adversity when everything around them isn't optimal. Because we've seen quarterbacks be front runners and have great games when everything is going great. But what are they going to do when things aren't going great?
That was Joey all the time, right?
Right, exactly. Joey, yeah. Exactly. Joey was the king of,
Captain
the second
first
half
quarter.
after he jacked up the first half, right?
The two quotes, my two favorite quotes from Bellotti were, "I never knew whether your first pass was going to go through the receiver's face mask or into the fourth row." And then,
but his last
my
pass
other
would be
favorite
right in
was,
his hands for the game-winning touchdown.
and then my other favorite was walking up the tunnel where he says, "You know what? You don't have to wait into the fourth quarter to start playing well." So.
Right. So let's call this a Joey Harrington-esque performance, because then all of a sudden the lights went on and it was like Bo Nix showed up to the Holiday Bowl and he was amazing in that fourth quarter. And after he started showing signs of being back, when they got the ball, down a touchdown, I'm like, they're going to drive down, they're going to score, because he's back into his rhythm and doing what we all thought he was going to do going into this game, because all of us believed they were going to at least come close to covering that 13-point spread. The only reason why they weren't is because Nix hadn't showed up yet. In the fourth quarter, he was dominant. And yeah, like Joey said, now everyone transferring there, all the freshmen coming in, everyone returning knows that you got a rock at quarterback who can overcome adversity in big games, and that gives them a good chance to at least have a look at winning the Pac-12 next season.
Also, he probably had one of the screwiest interceptions I've ever seen in my life. Let's be real. You got to give North Carolina credit for that pick in the red zone that Oregon probably would have scored on that drive as well, too. But I agree with you, Aaron. The fact that you have him coming back, that he played through adversity, was able to lead this team. We'll get to it a little bit later, but ending that game on that note will set the tone for this team for this offseason. All right, when we come back, plenty more Talkin Ducks. We got to talk about Bucky Irving. He goes over 1,000 yards this season. We'll highlight him when we return. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for some excellence on the football field, brought to you by Ferguson Wellman. Ferguson Wellman, presenting a disciplined approach to investing. Well, Bucky Irving, nobody knew who was going to be the starting running back coming into this season, but Bucky Irving goes north of 1,000 yards and a dominant performance in the Holiday Bowl. And Anthony, this is someone that caught your eye very early this season, as soon as you got a chance to see him touch the football. How thrilled are you for Bucky, for what he was able to do in this bowl game, but probably more importantly, what next year is looking like for him, as he has a chance to be one of the best running backs in the Pac-12 next year?
Well, let me apologize, because at the beginning of the year, he didn't catch my eye. I didn't even know who he was. So,
I tried to set you up, man. I tried to set you up to gas him up, but you had to be too honest. Too honest, Anthony.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest. The thing is that in that first game, okay, I was waiting for Byron Cardwell to come out and just really run all over the place, because I was really high on him. And then all of a sudden saw number 0. I said, number 0? Who's this? I watched him play a little bit. He didn't do so bad against Georgia with that dominant defense, okay? But watching him game after game, I'm like, wait a minute, who is this? And watching his ability, his vision, his toughness, he's not the biggest running back, but he can do so much. Catch the ball in the backfield, he can block, he can take it the distance, he can run over you. It's unbelievable what he can do. And to watch him play was, it was outstanding, because I know he had a great offensive line, but a lot of those runs were yards after contact. A lot of those runs were runs that he was setting up blocks. He has a great cutback ability. So he's dynamic. I mean, he's the real deal, and I can't wait to see him and start it out right for next year, because when you go into a game against Oregon, you better stop number 0.
Yeah, Joey, I mean, coming in, we're not sure who the running back's going to be. We're trying to guess, but that is a huge piece for this Oregon offense that's really been kind of missing the last couple of seasons. I think Oregon was spoiled at running back when you look at all the years from 2000 to 2010, and then even the first half of this past decade. But now it really feels like there's a legitimate answer to running back going into next season, no questions asked.
Are you dissing CJ Verdell?
But I was trying to figure out what Aaron's
CJ was
doing.
great,
Like,
but
he
it felt
checking
like
his
we didn't really
glasses?
get a
Like-
full taste of CJ because he was hurt that one year. You know what I mean? It's not like you went, hit after hit after hit after hit.
I'm
Now
gonna
it
let
feels
Fentress
like
take
with
this
Bucky
one. Fentress,
Irving,
you
you
go
got a
ahead.
sure
You go
thing
ahead on
coming
this one.
in.
No, you go ahead.
No, I prefer to see how this look pays off.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No,
Roast
okay,
me
no.
like the marshmallow I am over the open fire.
No. Last year Verdell was hurt, and then you went with Dye. The year before that, Verdell was hurt. He did have the he had to have 1,000-yard and 1,200-yard season, so it hasn't been that long since they had a number one guy. But no,
Okay, can I
go ahead.
rephrase the question to you,
Okay.
Aaron? And let me throw you another question. Bucky Irving coming back, as great as Dye and Verdell were, they didn't have Jonathan Stewart, Royce Freeman type years, right? Or impacts on the game. Do you think Bucky Irving can get to that point next season based upon what we saw this past year?
Well, Noah's back, right?
Yes.
And Noah, they got about the same amount of carries. So, so the question is Noah going to lose carries because Bucky had a little bit better season, averaging 6.8 yards per carry, I think, to 5-something for Noah? I just don't know if I believe that. Like, I don't think Bucky's going to have 1,500 yards and be a player of the year candidate in the Pac-12. Like, I think he's probably going to be right around 1,000 to 1,200 because Noah Whittingham isn't going anywhere, and he's going to deserve a lot of carries as well. But that being said, it was clear, right, that Bucky was maybe a notch above with his combination of speed and power, and he had a little bit more wiggle, I felt like. But one of the things with a guy like that who isn't huge is you want to kind of, minimize the carry so you can keep him healthy and keep him fresh. And that for me, his effectiveness partly came because he was sharing carries with another really good back. I don't see him as sort of like a guy who's ever going to be like a Freeman or a Stewart or a LaMichael, that kind of level, a guy who can rush for 15, 16, 1,700 yards.
But to jump in here, though, we said that same thing about Travis Dye, right? We questioned whether Travis Dye could be that workhorse back after CJ went down with an injury. And what did he do? He showed us that he had the capacity to do that. Now, I don't disagree that I think the better plan, better long-term plan is to have 2 to 3 guys who can share the load. But I think that Bucky has shown, I think maybe to answer the question this way, is it better to have multiple backs? Yes, it is. If he is the lead back, if he is the workhorse, if they choose to say, it's yours, go with it, I think that he can be a very special type of back. Now, is he a Jonathan Stewart? No, he's not. Is he a Royce Freeman? No, he's not that built. He's not built like that, but I do think that he has the potential to be a star running back, especially in this offense with Bo playing the way that he has been.
But is he going to get the touches? Is he going to get the touches?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is the smart choice by the coaching staff to limit touches, to divide them up? Sure. But if the coaching staff says, hey, we've got a couple guys in reserve that we feel really good about, but we feel like Bucky can be a lead back, workhorse type of guy, and we want to give it to him, sure. I think he could handle it. I think it's 2 different questions. Can he handle it? Yes. Would it be probably the best thing for the team for him long term? I don't know about that because of the way the game is going, but I think that he could handle that load should they choose to give it to him.
All right, we got to switch gears to defense here real quickly. Mace Spuna, defensive MVP of the game. Mace Spuna, defensive MVP of the game for the Ducks, announced his return afterwards for the 2023 season. Anthony, you look at this defense as they were really trying to fix things throughout the season, and Dan Lanning came in as a defensive guru at Georgia. But you look at this team's performance, especially in the second half. Was this one of their better performances? And then real quickly, how does the table set for them next year?
They got better as the game went on. Okay, they got better. They gave up some explosion plays that you can't give up as a defense. Against a good offense, they played well as a unit. You want to see a little bit more, pass rush, getting to the quarterback. The defensive backs, they played well in a lot of man-to-man situations. They didn't make a lot of mental mistakes, and that's what you look for, and that's what I look for, the mental mistakes. Are you giving an offense just, 50 yards for free because you didn't cover the right guy? So that's what I was watching, and they were flying around. You had young linebackers, Jeffrey Bossa and Keith Davis back there playing, running around, making mistakes. I saw the mistakes that they made, but yet they were still making plays, and that's what you want to see, and that's what you want to see going into next year. So this defense, we know it's going to be better than this year because you have another year under your belt trying to understand the defense as a player. But I think they played well. They did enough to win the football game.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk more about what this 10-win season means for the Ducks and the elite company that Dan Lanning joined in just his first year as head coach when we come back on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for some talking numbers. And Joey, the team gets to 10 wins this season, and that's always kind of been a magical number for a lot of programs. We saw Oregon State celebrate 10 wins this season, Washington when they got to 10 wins, and for Oregon, it's a 10-win season. It's another one, and you mentioned earlier it comes with 3 losses, and losses to Oregon State and Washington this season, but you've been a part of teams that go into the next season and they start this long process of preparation with all the weightlifting in the winter and the conditioning and the meetings, and then you have spring football, a lot of fans right now want to water down bowl games because they look at, did you get in the playoff or not? But when it comes to building a program to get to the point to get to one of those playoff spots, and now there's going to be more of them, how important is it to close your season out with a victory like this? How much does momentum actually exist from performances in your bowl game as you bridge the gap to next year?
Well, like I said earlier, I think the 10-win season is a great thing. I mean, it really is. I think that magic number of 10 carries less weight now as opposed to the momentum of winning your last game, right? Especially in the way in which they did it, right? Losses late in the season against Washington, the way things collapsed at Oregon State. I think this win and the style of win does so much for this momentum heading into the offseason, right? I think it solidifies what was a bit of a question mark maybe at the end of the year, right? Things were rolling mid-year. Like, people were talking college football playoff, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, we're talking about the worst loss in the history of the program, right? Like, that was a pretty big swing. And so
that's a football season for you, though, right?
Exactly. So to be able to have this kind of gutted out, dig yourself out of a hole, win a game that wasn't perfect type of win, that, like I said, established this coaching staff as rocks for this program going into the offseason, I think that's huge. So I think that is more important. First of all, yes, you're right. Those wins going into the offseason are I don't want to say transformative, but I'll say that the offseason was very different after the Holiday Bowl than it was after the Vegas Bowl, right? In my time there. Like, those off seasons were approached very differently. And so I don't think it's necessarily that magic number 10, but I think the way that they won the game at the end of the year has a great effect on the momentum coming into this offseason.
Joey hates number 10.
So you look at this here, and Dan Lanning now joins Mark Helfrich and Chip Kelly as the only Oregon coaches, Aaron, to win 10 games in their first season. So I guess, what does that mean for Dan Lanning, and how does that change the expectation for what Oregon is needing from him as a coach moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the whole only coach to win 10 games thing doesn't impress me because Kelly and Helfrich were both set up for that, right?
I wouldn't expect you to be impressed either, by the way.
They both inherited really good situations and won 10 games. Lanning inherited a team that had a lot of good recruiting, although we were discovering that some of it was overhyped, but they won 10 last year. So the fact that he won 10 this year, I mean, it's great, but I'm not going to look at it as some kind of historical thing. Whereas, Rich Brooks and Bellotti took over situations. Well, Brooks especially, although Bellotti took over a Rose Bowl team, but those teams weren't nearly as set up as I think these were. Anyway, that said, you coach what you have, you coach the schedule you have, you're in charge of all the development, all the preparation, all the game planning, and whatever the record is, that's your record. He earned it. He won those games. You got to give him a lot of credit. And it was his first year as a head coach, and that's a big leap, regardless of if you were at Georgia as a defensive coordinator and win a national title. That doesn't mean you're ready to be a great coach, and he had a really good first season. Are we going to grade this thing? Are we saving that, or are we doing that now?
We can save it for a little bit later.
Okay. because I have a grade. But no, I think
Go ahead.
I think there's no doubt.
I don't want to be the one that keeps you from putting a grade. I think this would be a great time for it. What grade do you give this team this year?
I think the 10-3 screams B+.
Yeah.
But because of the lopsided score against Georgia, 49-3, because they blew that 21-point lead against Oregon State, right? And because the defense, which is Lanning's side of the ball, was very mediocre, I got to take that B+ and make it a B-.
Oh! Oh!
What? A B-
A
is
visceral
quality?
reaction from one Joey Harrington.
What? You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that because
Tell me why.
Your qualifications there, you're saying if that Oregon State loss didn't happen, or if that Georgia loss didn't happen. Well, if
it wasn't
those
so
didn't happen,
lopsided.
they would have won 11 or 12 games, and that would have been a hell of an A, right? So those things, by using those as the barometer, like
Serenity
I think
now.
those things happening make it
Serenity
an A.
now.
I think those things not happening.
You're not. Okay. First of all, you're taking out of context. Not the loss to Georgia, the 49-3 to Georgia, not the loss to Oregon State, the blowing a 21-point lead against Oregon State, and the fact that he's a defensive coach whose defense was not very good. Those are all legitimate things. Now, if one of those changes, if Oregon State changes, then yeah, they got 11 wins if they win the bowl game. Yeah, then 11's way better than 10, Joey, as you have made clear.
Which
So
would
then
be
yeah,
an
he would
A
go from a
season.
B- to a B+, maybe an A. But those things combined drop it to a B- because even the Georgia thing I can forgive a little bit, but the Oregon State meltdown and the defense being mediocre when you are a defensive guy does not warrant to me a B+ or an A.
Okay, but here's what I'd say to that. If we're grading the coaching job, the blowout against Georgia, had the next couple games been continuing that trend, I would agree with that. But what happened is they used that and they built off of it. Had the Oregon State collapse at the end turned into a bowl game loss, then I would agree with that. But it didn't. It turned into something to be used as momentum for the offseason. So I disagree. I would say B+. I could compromise with you if you were willing to do so. And if we could both meet at a B, I'd be okay with that. But I would probably lean towards a B+ because it wasn't a perfect season. There were things that definitely needed to be fixed. But I think if any of those things are fixed, you win 11 games, and I think 11 games, that's got to be that's got to be an A- right there at the very least. So I don't know. I would go B+, but I could understand somebody going with a B. If you go with a B-, you just don't know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Wow!
Thank you.
You just
Newman.
had
And
to
you should
end
be
it with a
replaced by Chase
grenade,
Cota.
didn't you, Joey? Didn't you?
Here comes Chase Cota to take Fentress' spot.
Thank you.
Professor Newman with a doctorate
Newman
in
said thank
taking
you.
down receivers here. What grade do you give the team this year?
But look,
A triple A,
listen.
a
They
doctorate
got better,
degree.
Fentress. They got better. They
Super
get
A.
Yeah, they got better. But you don't understand.
5.0.
Okay, at the beginning of the year, you have a first-time head coach. He's never been a head coach before.
Every head coach in the history of Oregon was a
but
first-time
listen-
head coach.
no, but
Rich
listen.
Brooks was a first-time head coach.
Can I
Bellotti,
finish?
Kelly,
Can I finish?
Helfrich,
Can I
not
finish?
Taggart,
Not Taggart.
not Cristobal.
Taggart. He was the
Not
head
Taggart,
coach
not
beforehand.
Cristobal.
Oh,
This is the
you got it wrong, Aaron.
This is the
Get out the
fifth
show.
one. This is
Can
the
I
fifth
Where's
one.
Chase? I'm going to call Chase right now.
There's a lot going on to this. So let me finish, Aaron. Okay. Second, we need to get Chase in here
Chase,
pretty quick.
you free?
because-
Cristobal was a head coach.
Second, here's the thing.
Fentress is
I
losing.
changed it to
You have
5.
all new other. You have a whole new coaching staff that
You'll be
haven't
here
worked
20 minutes?
together.
Okay, cool.
Okay, coming in together. Then let's talk about the transfer portal. You got new guys coming in key areas.
The
key
transfer
positions.
portal helps
The
you
the
because you can
quarterback-
cherry
no,
pick guys that
listen.
you want to.
Oh, this is the
Okay,
longest
listen.
segment ever.
Saying
They
that,
still-
saying that I had to
still-
overcome. You're
Listen.
saying I have to overcome the
Listen.
transfer portal.
Listen.
If they didn't have the transfer portal, they win 6
Listen.
games because they don't get Bo Nix.
Okay, look, I'm gonna come through this camera. I'm gonna give you five more seconds. Okay, listen to what I'm saying. I'm gonna come through this camera and choke you. Now, here's the thing. You have to understand. No matter, you are a good football player, but you still have to learn a system. You still have to play with guys you haven't
gonna
played
choke
before. You have to understand who's your go-to guy. That takes time, and you have
They
a
had
new
10
coach.
months.
What?
They had 10 months. Go ahead and finish. I'm gonna let you finish.
10 months. It's not. You're not playing football in 10 months. You have a 4-month period of playing real football where you're going against an opponent that's really good. Okay, that takes time. Just playing in those games, those help you grow, not practice. Yeah, we talk about practice. Practice is important, but it's the games. It's the situations where you haven't been in before, like Dan Lanning trying to understand being a head coach and deal with his new football players as the quarterback, running backs, Chase Cota, new receiver, defense. His whole defensive group is different. That takes time. So I'm talking about what he's dealing with coming in here, okay, and get 10 wins. Yes, to me that's an A- B+. That's
Which
borderline.
One?
A- B+ because of the situation. Next year, it's a different story.
Is it an 89.9 or is it a 90.1, Newman?
89.9.
So if they had actually won the conference, what would you have given them? Master's degree? Like, what are we talking? Like,
It's an A. What, you win the conference? Are you kidding me?
Well,
and your
that's my
head
point.
coach?
If that's an A, but they didn't win the conference, they fell apart against Oregon State. They had a weak defense, but you're only going to drop them to an A to an A- after all that.
They
That doesn't make
finished out
sense.
with the
Okay.
bold.
You said 89.9. You said 89.9.
Fellas, as much as I would love to hear you guys continue to debate over percentage points, with
Jordan's
the
got to
grade,
pay bills. I
we
got to
do
check
have
my
3
email.
more segments to get to, and we got some bills to pay, so we're going to step aside. We're going to talk about the Pac-12 for next year. What's cooking coming up next on Talkin Ducks?
I'm going to reach through this camera and choke you.
You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for What's Cooking, brought to you by Sam's Northwest BBQ, located just south of Portland and Sherwood, home of Yoder Smoker products and so much more. Make sure to check them out. Largest brick and mortar barbecue store in the Northwest. All right, well, looking at the Pac-12, they go 3-4 in bowl season thanks to a couple of losses in the New Year's Six, Utah losing to Penn State, and USC losing to Tulane, who comes storming back in the final 4 minutes of that one. And you look at how bowl season went this year and the fact that USC, UCLA, Washington State, and Utah all lose their games here. Oregon, Washington, Oregon State getting the wins. And Aaron, let's start with you. What did the conference do to get itself in position for next year? And how is next year shaping up for the Pac-12 when you look at everything that's sitting there?
They went 3-4 in the bowl games, which is not horrible, but I think you wanted them to do better given how many teams were ranked in the top 25 in the season. But, given the grading curve we use on this show, I still give the conference an A+ for a bowl season because they did win 3.
Well played. Well played.
Two
I like
of the
that.
teams
Good,
are leaving
good.
for the Big Ten anyway. But
They're getting better, right?
No, seriousness. Things look good for this conference next season, given, sometimes quarterbacks get too much praise, too much blame, but man, they are going to be stacked at the quarterback position next season in this conference. And so it's going to be interesting to see, though, if they cannibalize each other and prevent a team from making the playoffs, or if a team can get a defense and rise to the occasion and win enough games and have a lot of strong wins because of the teams they beat to get into the playoffs. But I like where the conference is headed because the star power at quarterback is important, and they're loaded there.
Joey, bowl performances. You look at USC losing to Tulane, the team that lost to Utah in the Pac-12 championship game, and then Utah unable to win a Rose Bowl and back-to-back Rose Bowl appearances. What do you make about the conference and just their year when you look at how bowl season wrapped up for them for 2022?
I still think the conference was solid. I got to take that Utah game with a grain of salt, considering they didn't have their top running back and Cam Rising going down with injury right there at the start of the second half. Completely changed that game. Washington State. We talked about it beforehand. Jeff Tedford's a tough one to beat, and they're going to coog that one away. And frankly, like UCLA and USC, didn't we already establish that they're already going to their Big Ten conference anyway?
Schools, right?
They're gone. So by my calculation and our grading system, the Pac-12 went 3-1-1 because the Utah game counts as a tie because both both of their best players were out. Right, Fentress? That's how the new grading system works.
Apparently.
Yeah,
so,
it works for that.
But your question about quarterbacks, this is. I don't think anybody was surprised by the USC loss. I mean, that's literally the book on USC. They're going to score a bunch of points, but they couldn't stop anybody. And with that offense coming back, I mean, you got Caleb Williams, you got Penix, you got Bo Nix, you got
Rising's back
DJ
too, right?
transferring in.
We'll get to the quarterbacks next segment. We'll definitely spend a little bit more time on
I thought you
that.
told me that.
Lots of excitement. I know. How dare I keep us on schedule? Real quickly, Anthony, you look at what happened in these Pac-12 bowl games. I think USC was one of the more disappointing ones. What do you take away from their performance?
Yeah, USC, that was poor. I mean, and everybody, when they look at the Pac-12, they look at USC. And USC was, one game away from being in the playoffs? Are you kidding me? They don't have a defense. And you won't win championships without a defense. Matter of fact, defense wins championships. They don't have one. And until they change that, they won't be on top. People are gonna put them on top because it's USC. But when they go play the game, they won't finish on top.
All right, we'll talk more about these quarterbacks coming back to a loaded Pac-12 next segment as we continue along on Talkin Ducks. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. All right, welcome back to Talkin Ducks. The latest news when it comes to all the quarterbacks jumping into the Pac-12, DJ Uiagalelei transferring from Clemson, Joey. He's going to keep the orange and play for Oregon State. And so many people said if the Beavers can get a quarterback of this caliber, watch out, because everything else they have makes them loaded. And now Jonathan Smith has arguably the best quarterback he's had at Oregon State in a long time. Your thoughts on Uiagalelei coming to the Pac-12, what it means for the Beavers and what it means for the conference?
Okay, first of all, my thought is that we need to figure out how to pronounce the last name because I'm pretty sure his brother's coming to school at Oregon. So my understanding was it was Uiagalelei.
Uiagalelei, yeah.
Yes, Uiagalelei. So anyway, he's good. And he's coming to Oregon State, whose defense is good. I mean, this conference is literally going to be loaded with quarterbacks. Penix, Ward, Bo, Caleb Williams, DJ transferring, Colorado, Sanders, Notre Dame's quarterback coming to Arizona. I mean,
Drew Pine.
It's literally top to bottom going to be some of the best quarterbacks in the country. And so there may potentially be some cannibalism, but I mean, this is going to be great football to watch next year, at least offensively.
Aaron, your thoughts on all these quarterbacks? Is it one of the most loaded groups of QBs we've seen in the Pac-12 since when Joey was here, basically?
Absolutely, it's stacked. And I just want to focus mainly on Oregon State because this is huge. And I've been wondering if they were going to be able to pull this off at some point. This kid is 6'4", 250. He will run you over a la Cam Newton back in the day. And even though he got benched at Clemson, the five-star kid put up 3,000 total yards of offense and 29 touchdowns, 7 rushing. And only 7 picks. If he gave Oregon State that this season, where would they have been? Would they have won the conference? I don't know. You plug in those types of numbers at quarterback. So if he, comes and plays for someone like Jonathan Smith, who was a quarterback and coaches quarterbacks pretty well, but you can only do so much. You got to have a talented guy. If he can get the most out of this kid, if he can elevate his play just like Bo Nix did, coming from Auburn to Oregon, then watch out for the Beavers, man. I'm excited to see what Jonathan Smith does with this kid.
All right, Anthony, what does your future son-in-law think about Uiagalelei coming to Oregon State and the excitement there?
He's very happy. He thinks that they're going to the playoffs. I think he's lost his mind. But anyway, the important thing is that for a defense now, you have your hands full. The game starts with the quarterback. In today's game, it's much different than it used to be. You just hand the ball off to the running back in an I formation and a couple of play actions like Joey did. But in today's game, the quarterback's doing everything. And so, if you're playing, each game and you got to play against a top-notch quarterback, your hands are going to be full for a defense, and you have to really prepare and play well and play flawless against all these Pac-12 teams.
Apparently, Joey, you did jack squat when you were in school, according to Anthony. So anyway, I'd love to give Joey a rebuttal. We got to move to the final segment here. When we come back, we'll close things out with our resolutions for the conference and for Oregon football in 2023. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Talkin Ducks, built by Par Lumber. Welcome back. Time now for our Rock Solid Pick, brought to you by Milan Stoneworks, bringing you the finest stoneworks in all of the Northwest. And guys, it's 2023. I'm not much of a resolution guy, but hey, I heard they're pretty popular. What resolution do you have for Oregon football for this upcoming season, even though we're months away from kickoff? Aaron, let's start with you.
I'm gonna say fix the defense, man. You know, you have, like Newman just said, defense wins championships. Their defense was shaky this season. If you can improve that defense into the top 40 in the country, I think you have a legit chance of winning the Pac-12. If you do not, you are going to be susceptible to getting defeated a few times because there's so many good quarterbacks in this conference that can beat you. So they have to get that defense fixed. And that's on Lanning. He's a defensive guy. That's his side of the ball. He's got to make that unit respectable.
Joey.
I have two resolutions. One, to help you pronounce Uiagalele.
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 Well, there's an N sound in there.
That's Uiagalele.
You said Unga? Okay. I heard Aga. Okay.
But so there's no N, so that's what.
Your
that's,
second
so
resolution.
is it
But it has an N
Uiagalele
sound.
Or Uiagalele.
Yeah.
Okay, good. There we go. Number two was to remind Mr. Newman that even though he won 0 bowl games, I had to check. I think I had 18 rushing touchdowns at Oregon, but I'm not really sure.
1 yard
So,
and more. 1 yard?
doesn't matter. Doesn't
Touchdown's
show on the
a
stat
touchdown.
sheet. Just says TD rushing.
Touchdown still. Anthony, real quick, your resolution, my friend.
Hey, defense. You know, Aaron says that you got to have a better defense, and then also we need to have me and Aaron sit next to each other when we do the show, not through the cameras, so we can really look eye to eye at each other. You know,
I'm with you
Me
guys.
and
I
my
think
family-
Oregon needs
me
to
and my
get
family say
specifically-
no.
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, I feel like Oregon specifically needs to get a pass rush because you got to put some pressure on these quarterbacks for next season, regardless of what you have in the rest of the backfield. Either way, though, a successful Oregon season. Congratulations, Dan Lanning, to come in here all the way across the country, lead this team to 10 wins. You did a fantastic job this year. We're excited to see you next year. And of course, make sure you tune in next week. We've got all sorts of news with the transfers, some coaching changes for Oregon. We'll give you our Oregon basketball preview as well, too. From all of us here, Happy New Year once again, and we'll see you next time.